And Happy New Year to you and yours. We welcome you into the 2018 edition, a new year for us on Moral Side of the News. I'm John Blinn with the WHAS Crusade-For-Children. We have a panel, we have topics, so let's get started for the new year. On this week's program, frigid temperatures further endanger the homeless. One group takes to the streets to help those in desperate need. Plus, dealing with the pension system deficit and other pressing issues gets sidetracked by Kentucky House Speaker Jeff Hoover's secret sexual harassment settlement. We'll discuss these topics with our distinguished panel here on our program today, Moral Side of the News. With us today, Dr. Tom Mobley, President, Louisville Bible College, Reverend Clay Calloway, West Louisville Ministers Coalition, Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church, Reverend Sally McLean, Retired Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and Rabbi Emeritus Stan Miles, Temple Shalom. Up first on our program today, 2018 has started with bone-chilling conditions. When the temperature sinks below 20 degrees, it is dangerous to be outside, but that doesn't mean everyone chooses to go inside. WHAS 11's Shane McAllister takes us inside Louisville's homeless community with a group working tirelessly to keep them alive.
Julie, did you say you had some hot hands in your car? Yep.
Outside, it's only 17 degrees, but inside the Fed with Faith kitchen, hot soup, warm socks,
here's a scarf,
and packed sandwiches, ready to be loaded into vehicles and delivered to those spending the night on Louisville's streets.
Tonight we're going out on cold serves. Anytime it goes below 20 degrees, we go out and take care of the folks that we know about and also look for people that are in trouble.
Ken Hall has volunteered with Fed with Faith for the last 2.5 years. He has relationships with many of the people he will serve tonight and knows they won't go into the shelters, even in the coldest conditions.
Yeah, these people are people, even if they've got issues. And they still deserve some dignity and respect.
His first stop up a steep hill. It's a man he's served for years.
I appreciate it.
Mr. Sterno.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming out in the cold, man, 'cause I know I went out earlier. Well, it's still a little bit warm out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to get a little warmer, but it's supposed to still get down to about 10 tonight.
Yeah, no, I think he said it was like 2 below last night or something like that.
Yeah, it was cold.
Yeah, it's freezing, man.
So anyway, you need anything else? I brought you some socks. Thought you might use a. Make sure I don't hand you my glove.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right.
All right, God bless you guys.
All right, take care. Good night. Stay warm.
Hall says everyone sleeping outside has their own reason why, ranging from anxiety to substance abuse.
He's very secluded there, and that's sort of how he prefers it.
The volunteers offer to take them to a shelter and then give them what they need to survive the night.
It seems like we rarely have excess. It's kind of like whatever comes in today goes out today, and that's sort of our cycle.
Once they've served the ones they know where to find,
There's your soup, sandwich.
they start looking for others.
Right there.
Checking bus stops and benches.
You hungry? Are you hungry?
The mission is to leave no one behind. When he's wrapping up his route, it's 14 degrees. And he has a moment that reminds him just how meaningful these missions are.
She was cold, not nearly dressed for this weather. Those are the people that when you kind of leave them, you kind of think you've made a difference when you went out tonight.
Shay McAllister,
You doing all right tonight?
WHAS 11 News.
All right, take care, man.
Fed with Faith is an all-volunteer and donation-based. They've been out every night since the beginning of last week. You can learn more and help out if you wish. Learn more at WHAS11.com. We turn to our panel on our program, Moral Side of the News. And panel, does Fed with Faith highlight the role of churches, organizations to make a difference with homeless people?
I think that these are so incredibly righteous people who are putting themselves out to save lives. I'm in awe of their courage and their diligence and their mission.
I think most of us in churches know that there are people who do not want to go to shelters and refuse to go to shelters, and yet there's somebody who's willing to find them, to take them the necessary items. It's been even colder since that was filmed, and so when you're looking at a SNAP that's going on for as long as, what are we, 2-3 weeks now, and maybe even longer, yes, they're to be commended, and I'm sure it's a lot of repeat people that they're seeing, but then again, there's still others out there, and yes, I think they're very much to be commended. It's offering to give to those who are in the greatest of need.
I think the food and the clothing are very important to give, but also I think about the spiritual gift, the compassion, the very love that people have for a stranger is also a gift. And the gift is not only given to those homeless, it's given to the rest of this community too. It's a real witness to show that kind of care. I guess you could look at the situation from the perspective of outcomes. I do not, but to say there's so many homeless people, somehow to force them to a place of care, to force them to a place where they're safe and all that, but respecting human dignity and their freedom, we sort of say that those who are there, they're there, that's what they choose to be. And to reach out to them and to care for them, I think is just a really wonderful ministry.
Well, clearly is a faith connection there, I think is undeniable. Even Jesus said, referring to himself, said that foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man hath nowhere to lay his head. So clearly, I think he identified with those who are homeless in that condition. That's why we were challenged, the Christian community are challenged to feed the hungry. When I was hungry, you fed me, naked, you clothed me. So clearly, it's a connection there. Just recently, it seems like the homeless have been in the news a lot more lately. There was a big homeless community, kind of a camp downtown. If you pass by this viaduct that was created by the new expressway change, I mean, I was amazed at just how big that campground had grown into, and the city had given an order to clear it out, and then apparently there was some pushback from that, but many people do not have places to go for whatever the reason. And it's good to see individuals and individual faith communities stepping up. But it's not just the challenge for faith communities, but I think the city and government has a role there, because they are citizens and they do impact the life of the community. So it's good to see individuals who put themselves out to take food and to take socks, but that would not clearly alleviate the problem that some policies may be able to address on a much broader scale.
I think those who often criticize the church and religious groups forget sometimes the good. Maybe they don't know, but this is, cold time of the year, but this goes on year round. There are programs that reach out to people. It's desperately needed now because life is so affected by the temperatures. But our faith-based groups continue to reach out and help people. And I know this is dealing with downtown Louisville and mostly, but this is going on out further in other counties. There's a program called Room in the Inn that's going on in Shepherdsville and Bardstown and Elizabethtown and maybe many others that I'm not aware of. But churches are running this, where that people come in and they rotate the church, and different churches will house the people for that night, and they have cots and this type of thing, and they provide food, and there is a check that's done about them, but it's just it's going on all over. And that is something that's being done not by the government. It's not being done by rich people, quote unquote, per se. It's being done by people who care and people who want to serve and are doing it because of their belief and wanting to serve God. I think it's a tremendous thing to see. I think it's a tremendous witness. I just wish people would recognize how the church continues to serve people even when it's under criticism by many.
Well, the volunteer featured in that we just saw or heard Ken Hall said, "These people are people." And you could feel the compassion in it, could you not? It was palpable.
They're people because we all made in the image of God.
Yes.
I mean, so they're humans, they're made in the image of God, and in that sense, they're the people that God cares about and told us, the church, to care about. I agree with you, Tom. Nobody does it better than the church. Church will always false, and I'm probably the first to criticize a church when it puts itself in a position of being a high hypocrite. When it comes to helping and serving, nobody does it better. I mean, so when it comes to cases like this and reaching out and putting themselves out, it's that compassion and the love of God. That
Even the hurricane, you know, the hurricanes that come in, it was the churches who went down and often did the mass majority of the work and stayed. I mean, there's still church groups going down to the Gulf, still trying to help rebuild houses down there and get people going again. That gets so often overlooked. I'm sorry, Stan.
No. There's a legend in Jewish tradition that the world endures because there are 36 righteous people doing God's work. They're different in age and creed and faith and race, but they're doing God's work, and none of them know that they are, but this is why the world endures. And when I look at this guy, I'm thinking, he could be one of the 36.
And I'm gonna.
But I have a question. Why are folks in that situation totally against seeking a shelter, an indoor shelter? What's going on?
Could be many and varied. Could be mental issues going on.
Personal choice,
mental
anxiety.
health, anxiety, like I said, mental drugs. Could be many and varied. Some may be good reasons.
Some are wanted, to be very honest, but and they think they're wanted or think they're wanted, but many times they really aren't. Or, you know, the warrant that was out for them is no longer good. You know, but they've got that in their mind, and they're afraid to come in. They're afraid to face the authorities.
That could be an example, but they many and varied.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm speaking off the top of my head here. I'm trying to remember the name of an organization. I believe it's the Coalition for the Homeless.
Yes.
Who have a goal stated that a home for every person in the city of Louisville. And they even have stated the amount of money that would cost. And again, not really sure if everyone would choose that, you know, because we don't know because of the freedom that they have, that they may not want that. But isn't that a worthy vision and a worthy goal to have, is that everyone in the city would have an opportunity for a home. And, you know, it's just even if we're not there, but to live day to day, to operate that could happen.
And that's an aspirational goal and ideal, even the Christian faith. God expresses that He would hope that none would perish. So His aspiration is to save the world.
I want to put, I'm sorry, are you finished? I want to put in a plug for the community ministries here in Louisville because they do a fantastic job, and I hope that people...
With meager resources, I might add.
Yeah, and yes, with meager resources and meager staff oftentimes, but they do an incredible job. And Louisville, I think, needs to be very proud of some of the work that it does, because I think Louisville has been known as a compassionate city, and this certainly is an example of that.
All right, well, we're going to change our topics quite a bit here now for our second topic on Moral Side of the News. A Louisville Republican has filed the first formal complaint against embattled Kentucky House Speaker Jeff Hoover. The ethics complaint begins a process that could lead to the removal of the top-ranking Kentucky GOP House member following a secret sexual harassment settlement. WHAS 11's Chris Williams has more from Frankfort.
Louisville Republican State Representative Phil Moffitt confirmed for me that he filed the complaint before the House adjourned late this afternoon, although he would not comment on why he took the action. That happened on the same day that House members took part in their annual sexual harassment training.
Yeah, afterwards?
Yeah. Okay. We ran into Speaker Jeff Hoover before the session began, but he said he would not be commenting until afterwards. But as lawmakers began to leave, he was nowhere in sight. In November, he said he would resign his leadership role in light of a sexual harassment scandal, but just yesterday, it became apparent he was going to let an ethics investigation play out before making any official move. The 23A filing signed by Phil Moffitt is the first since a new rule went into place yesterday, sending the complaint to a panel of 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats to investigate before any push to expel a lawmaker can proceed. Louisville Republican Jerry Miller chairs the committee that the investigating panel will report under.
I think it was pretty much a given that someone was going to file, and I understand that did happen.
How long do you think it'll take to investigate fully before the next step?
Actually, I've not been involved in this since it broke, so I first have to get up to speed with what is the status of the Legislative Ethics Commission investigation, because they're the ones with subpoena power. They're the ones that could get the documents.
House Floor Minority Leader Rocky Atkins will have to select the 3 Democrats to serve on the investigative panel.
You know, it's a cloud over this chamber, and that's the reason that our Democratic membership, our caucus, believes in the best interest that the Speaker, Speaker Hoover, Jeff Hoover, should step aside.
But if your party already believes that Jeff Hoover should step aside, can you have 3 members who will impartially look at this panel and decide whether Jeff Hoover should step aside?
Well, I don't think there's any question about that. We have very professional people in our caucus.
Is it safe to assume that this could drag on for weeks, if not months?
It's not my intention to drag it on a day longer than it has to.
I've reached out to Speaker Hoover for reaction to the complaint filing, but I have not yet heard back. At the Capitol, Chris Williams, WHAS 11 News.
And we turn to our panel on our program Moral Side of the News panel. Since Jeff Hoover has not resigned, is waiting for this Ethics Commission ruling the proper avenue to settle this issue.
How selfish
Yeah,
that this is
there you go.
this is going
That's the
on.
word.
You know, we have pension reform.
That's the word
The
right
Commonwealth has a budget
Right.
to establish, and this nonsense, the clock is ticking. The legislature is in session for a finite amount of time, and enough.
Right, and you have, we just talked about the homeless issue here. We got real, real life and death issues that are facing this state. And to be held up by this nonsense, I think is a great word to use there. And selfishness is another word there. They were sent to Frankfurt to serve and not to serve themselves. So if you're impeding the process of the work that you were sent to Frankfurt to do, then you need to step aside and not be a stumbling block to the process to help those in need that you've been elected to serve. So I think that, and to have his other colleagues, standing up against him in his own party, I mean, it speaks volumes in my opinion as well. So I think it's a waste at a time we cannot afford to waste any time or resources for this session to go to do the work that they were sent to Frankfurt to do.
I'm not for sure whether it's being impeded, to be honest with you. I mean, the media is very excited about this, and that's where they're headlining. And but other things are being done. This is not the only committee that will be, and this is a committee of 6 that will be formed. So hopefully we don't get overwhelmed with the idea of that this is the only thing that's going on. No one is pleased about this. No one would want this. But I think you've got to understand the political aspect of what is going on. Before this ever broke, there was already reports coming out that there was a split between the Republican Party and some against Hoover. The governor within the Republican Party, and Hoover and the governor seemed to be at odds on some things that the governor wanted done. And so you've got that going on in addition to the tremendous mistakes made by Hoover. And so what is going to happen, I think is exactly what should be happening. There's going to be an investigation. It's going to be 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats. Hoover will be, whether he should have resigned or not, we can all have our opinions on that. But at least it's working, people. It's working. That's the good thing. And if it comes to conclusion, now his people selected him, and they'll have a chance to select him again if they want to, or to select someone else. This group of legislators had a choice to select him, or they could select someone else, and that will happen again. So government is working here, even though it stinks sometimes.
So you're saying don't rush to judgment?
Yeah, let's wait and see what happens here. Whether or not he made the right decision, I personally think he probably was right in the beginning. But you know, let's let government work. It's actually working this time. Hopefully, it looks like it is.
So the government paid for, the state paid for this case so that it would go away. Is that correct?
With government funds?
With government funds.
That's
Isn't
what's
that,
been alleged.
Alleged, but not proven.
Well, this group
So
will find
this group
out.
is going to find out whether or not
Ethics
that's
Commission.
true. And then
Yeah.
he had already resigned, and now he's refusing to resign.
He
So
had,
that's
he
the-
resigned, but it wasn't an official resignation. He just said he was going to resign on the media. Now he's decided, since he did not go through the legal way of resigning, he hasn't resigned. And so he's decided now to not resign until the final choice comes out. It's, you know, again, to me it would have been so much easier, go on and and you said you're going to resign, go on and resign. I mean, that's my personal opinion. But what I'm saying is, since he didn't do that, it's not going to be just left. The government is working on this.
Well, it's sort of like the tip of the iceberg, okay? And when you get down into all the complications and all the contradictions that go on, then what you're saying is it's more complicated than what we see, and we should let the process work.
It kind of resembles the Al Mikan on a national scale. I mean, I see a lot of intramural, challenging, not only locally but nationally as well, not only statewide. That the party itself is fighting to purge itself and in effect save itself.
Like an intramural dodgeball game.
Right. So it's an intramural, and it's you haven't got to the crossing, get down to the field against your real opponent. You got some fighting on the ship, and with the intent to make the crew stronger so they can fight the real enemy. So you see that taking place in the state. It happened with Al Mikan, the Democrats.
Al Franken.
Al Franken, excuse me. Al Franken.
Minnesota.
In Minnesota. So it was mainly his own colleagues with his own party that challenged him to make the announcement. Similar there, he made an announcement, but he never made a formal process to remove himself. And he could have very well backed out as well, but he elected to follow through with it apparently. So, but it's a trend that's going on across the country.
I see sort of three areas around this issue. One is just the objective sense about that sexual harassment has an objectively wrongness to it. That's one particular issue that in itself is there's a sense of wrongness about it. And the second issue is the ethical evaluation of Jeff Hoosier by his other people in Congress, in the state. And then the third thing is just the political realities of it all. In this particular issue, what I see is that there seems to be an agreement among all three, although it's taking some time to gather. I'm not impressed with the fact that, or at the beginning, that he resigned from his as a speakership, right? And then decided to stay in until formally an ethical charge, right, was against him, right, from the committee. And I just don't, that wavering is not very impressive to me, but I think of those three areas there, the actual wrongness of it, the judgment by his peers, and then the political reality. It seems to me that all three are kind of in the same space. They're all three working,
And
unless you may disagree with me on that. But
No. One thing that comes out, I think, too, is what's this doing to his family, aspect of it, versus power. And I think that may be a little bit of the play here. The power of being the speaker, he has, in my opinion, he should weigh that against what he's doing to his family and the damage, because the more this investigation goes, there's the possibility, I'll just throw out, that it could get even dirtier.
So he's
it's the
opening
same
himself
thing.
up to more by dragging this out? in a way, do you think? I mean,
But the question is, while all of this is going on, not only in the state of Kentucky, but also in Washington, who's suffering?
Well, the people.
Who is
Taxpayers.
suffering?
And
so
taxpayers.
when do we look at that? Whether it's the healthcare situation or the tax situation or whatever situation, who's suffering? And are our elected officials paying attention to who's suffering?
And the key word is paying, because we having to pay for this, because not only the time to settle the so-called scandals, the cases, but we pay in terms of time and not giving attention to the other issues that you mentioned, Sally. So we're paying, but we're the ultimate victims in this whole ordeal. And the perceived power or prestige with being a speaker, I think he's elected by his peers, the majority being them. They can unelect him. I don't know what the process is to remove him. I mean, he can just be undone, just like Boehner. He was there one day and gone the next. So that was among his own party making that decision.
And we can ill afford to waste the taxpayers' money, one nickel of it, in the Commonwealth of Kentucky in these days.
so one of the people in that last video we just saw, and I don't recall who it was, said that this is a cloud over this chamber. And you have to think, you're seeing people on camera and making statements who maybe aren't comfortable doing this because they've been forced to do so. So is that a good thing, that it's becoming a little bit more transparent?
Well, that's always
process?
good. I mean, always good.
And you're seeing people you maybe normally wouldn't see.
And again, I'm encouraged that it's his own party. I mean, when it's your own party doing it, it carries a different kind of weight than when it's coming from the other side. I know that, like Tom mentioned, there's some other political ramifications even within the party. But still, when the own party is coming out saying it, it just gives it another kind of credibility. It's like a member of your family. I mean, we're less likely to air dirty laundry in our own family. But there are occasions when you have to acknowledge that there's sin in the house, and you have to address that fever that's in your house. Right.
This aspect of sin is something that we need to deal with, and forgiveness and that type of thing. But, within the personal belief of politicians, many of them are human beings. And, they maybe get into a position of power, and they think maybe they can do some things they shouldn't do, and they're just like the rest of us. So we have to deal with it from that standpoint as well. They're not just, as we were talking about the homeless earlier, they're human beings too, and we've got to try to help them in these situations.
As we close our program, I want to just make note of the passing of Ray Shelton, longtime WHAS TV news anchor. In fact, the very first voice people heard on this television station in 1950. He passed away at the age of 89, so our prayers and thoughts with him and his family. We want to thank you for watching this version of Moral Side of the News. Thank you to Tom Mobley, Clay Calloway, John Stoltz, Sally McLean, and Stan Miles. You can watch this program again on WHAS11.com. And in the meantime, if you have time to figure out and take time to learn more about children with special needs, go to WHAScrusade.org and see how you can help change a child's life. Happy New Year from all of us here at Moral Side of the News. We'll see you next time.